This is the Jackson Sun's Scorers Table basketball video here on JacksonSun.com. I'm Sun Sports Editor Brandon Shields. He is our local college sports writer, Craig Thomas. And Craig, we're kind of getting into the home stretch of basketball season, more conference games going on. And a lot of local teams have some big conference games this weekend. First of all, let's start in the city and work our way out. Union's going to be at home this week against Valdosta.
Yeah, Union's had a pretty busy week. They played Lee on Monday night. I was out there. Two pretty entertaining games. The women didn't have their best game. A couple of, I guess, subpar performances from some key players. Not to say they played poorly, but it wasn't their best game. They lost a close one there to Lee with about 3 seconds left. The guys, on the other hand, basically got the kind of bucket that the women needed and won by a couple of points over Lee. So a big win for them. They'll both be playing West Florida Thursday. Be out there tonight, and then. Saturday they'll be playing Valdosta State, and Valdosta is a team that's 3-1 in the conference, both the men and women. So a pretty good Gulf South test for both the teams.
Back around Christmas, you had a story about some of the freshmen Union on the men's team. Just how is Coach Niven kind of meshing those young guys with some of the more experienced guys from what you've seen?
Well, there's a little bit of meshing, but honestly, like, the freshmen are playing quite a bit. There's not a whole lot of really experienced talent to work with. I mean, some of those other guys they're playing are, like Roy Bullock, who's a young guy, and Corian Pearson, who's only a junior, and it's only his second year at Union on the floor. So, I mean, this is not a real experienced team either way, but I think one of the things that David Niven has talked about is not just that those three freshmen, I'm talking about Ashanti Day and Felipe Rocha and Miguel Martinez, not only are they best for the future, they're really the best options for right now. And those guys are all pretty big and strong, and they're athletic, and they've had some good prep experience. So I think they're making Union better pretty obviously. I mean, he as much as said without Ashanti Day on Monday night they wouldn't have won, and he kind of played well until the others kind of got their act together in the last few minutes. So it hasn't been too much meshing as far as like a big senior class or anything like that. But I think you're seeing some early good results for the Union guys from those three.
Sure. All right, well then also on Saturday, Freed-Hardeman, they're still NAIA in a new conference this year, but they're taking on an old foe from the Trans-South and Lyon, which is probably going to be some of their best competition for the rest of the year.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I'm interested to see how Freed-Hardeman handles this week. The women had several ranked games real early in the year and won all of them, and then I think they had 5 in a row at one point. They played Bethel twice and beaten them. And then since then they've entered conference, and they've played some teams that are just not even near on their level. They've won 4 conference games, the women have, all by at least 40 points. Mm-hmm. They got Missouri Baptist tonight and then Lyon on Saturday, and I'm curious to see how they've sort of handled the last few weeks since Christmas, and even a little bit before that. Did they keep working as hard as they needed to in practice? Did they keep holding themselves to that really high standard? In last year's Freed-Hardeman team did, and that's I think why they got to the Fab Four, the NAIA. But this year's team has to do that too, and even though there's not always a Bethel or a Union looming like there maybe used to be to keep them on their toes, there are going to be some better teams in the American Midwest going forward, and it's possible Lyon's one of those teams. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle it if they're not able to just jump out to a 15-2 lead the way it seems like they've done a handful of times. And then the men's side, there's been a lot of talk about the women the last couple of years, but the guys are having a really great year. Mm-hmm. They had such a hard time last year with all the injuries and ineligibility and stuff like that, but they're undefeated as well at 9-0 going into tonight, and they'll play again Missouri Baptist and Lyon. Kyle Teisman's moved up to 8th all time in scoring, so he's having another good year. And I think once you knew that he was healthy, you knew he'd be productive for them because he has been the whole time that he's been at school. So I'm impressed with the depth that the Freed-Hardeman guys have. I think that is a very good sign for them throughout the course of the season. They have several guys that can score and defend and just kind of play fast the way Jason Shelton wants them to play.
Yeah. Well, winding up with getting into NCAA and Ohio Valley Conference play, UTM, they've got some tough competition coming in this week, particularly on the men's side as Belmont visits out of Nashville.
Yeah, when you beat North Carolina on the road, you're going to catch some people's attention, and that's what Belmont did. They went into Chapel Hill at the beginning of the year and beat North Carolina. But beyond that, they're one of the top teams in the OVC. They're the defending conference champ. Basically just jumped right into the league last year and knocked off Murray State in the championship game. So Belmont's legit. There's no doubt about it. UT Martin is 0-3 in conference. They had their struggles in the non-conference, losing games to UMKC, a game they probably shouldn't have lost at home. Mm-hmm. So I think they've been better since then. But the proof is still yet to come. I mean, they got to win some conference games fast, not just to move out of the bottom. Just make sure you're one of those top 8. You definitely want to be one of those top 8 of the 12 teams, so you can get to that conference tournament.
Right.
They snuck in last year, but you have to remember Jacksonville State wasn't eligible, and they were really the 9th team in the conference and sort of got into that 8th spot. This year they got to be top 8, or they're not going to be a national at the end of the year. And so, the sooner you get those wins, the more cushion you'll have for yourself down the road. Belmont's going to make it tough, though.
I was kind of speaking on the women's side. They had a really tough non-conference schedule early on in the season, which is typical of a Kevin McMillan put together schedule. Just kind of, what are they expecting with Belmont coming in this week?
Well, I mean, I think just first off, as far as addressing the non-conference schedule, you have to be pleased with the Alabama win. Would have liked to beat Missouri. I think that would have been another pretty good quality win. Had some trouble there against Gonzaga and some of those other teams they played, but overall, I think that the general purpose was served in that the players had to kind of learn a little bit. And I'm curious to ask Kevin, sort of what his takeaway is from the non-conference they played. Did it accomplish everything they wanted, other than winning a few more games?
Right. Has
it made his team better? I think you saw a little bit of that, though, probably in Clarksville. We weren't there, but it was at Austin Peay, and the Skyhawks were down early. You had a shooter for Austin Peay who was having a career game, knocking down all these threes, had a 14 or so point lead around the half, and then after that, UT Martin got to the foul line. Heather Butler and Jasmine Newsom, probably just a little bit too quick for some of the people that are guarding them for 35 minutes, and UTM finished with 95 points, which is quite an output, and I think that we could see some more games like that out of them, to where they're not necessarily dominating from the stretch. I don't expect them to do that too often, but eventually it's going to be very difficult to keep defending Butler and Newsom on the perimeter if they are aggressive about going to the basket. And when you see a freshman like Asia Jones contributing it the way she has in the post, that's going to make a big difference. Like we've talked about, it seems like the last couple of years, when UTM gets that third contributor for scoring or for defense or whatever it is, they're a much better team, and all of a sudden they're an easy favorite for the OVC.
All right, well, on Saturday we'll have riders at all 3 of those places, Martin, Henderson, and in Jackson at Union, covering these games. Be sure to follow Craig on Twitter at JS Rider Craig. You're going to Freed-Hardeman, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he'll have plenty of tweets from that. Are you going anywhere tonight?
I'll be at Union tonight.
All right, so follow him for updates from that game as well. And for all the time for updates from local college sports in West Tennessee. Kind of some things to look ahead. UTM will be, I guess, kind of introducing their new athletic director to the public next week. I think Craig and I are planning on being up there for part of that. So hopefully we'll have some good coverage of that next week. But thanks for reading, thanks for watching, thanks for logging on, and thanks for looking to us for your #1 source for local sports coverage in West Tennessee at the Jackson Sun and JacksonSun.com.